Alright Skyblock players, let's talk about this patch. Yesterday morning, the Skyblock community was met with some unexpected changes. The changelog is very tiny, but it sure does seem to make a monster impact. Bundled in this changelog includes the Thunderlord Thunderbolt ability being usable again, a halt on AFK players counting towards the Legion ultimate buff, and the change that has got everyone talking the most, a nerf towards Slayer Quest XP. More specifically, each mob killed during a Slayer Quest will now give up to 50% of the XP required to spawn the Slayer boss maximum. The reason given for this change specifically was to ensure that Slayer bosses weren't being exploited without going back to the normal game loop of grinding their spawn. This change specifically was met with an unusually largely negative reception from Skyblock players, to the point where the thread announcing it is now the second most disliked thread in the patch notes section. The biggest complaints I've seen about this change mostly involve the effect it has on a certain mayor, a strange little fellow that only comes around every so often. That's right, it's derpy. Players are complaining that nerfing this XP gain has effectively made a tactic called Slayer trading completely void, and in response has rendered derpy a useless mayor, as most players believed Slayer trading to be one of derpy's biggest benefits. Now, for those that don't know what Slayer trading is, it's when the combat XP obtained from killing one Slayer boss is enough to spawn the other person's boss. For example, the most popular form of Slayer trading is easily with Revenant Tier 5. In order to Slayer trade, a player will kill someone else's Revenant Tier 5 boss, and it would grant them enough XP to spawn their own boss. Now, when Derpy was the mayor, players would be able to do this trick for an infinite period of time, but obviously that's not the case anymore. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I've ever dabbled in Slayer trading. I haven't. I personally don't see much fun in hitting the same 3 buttons for hours on end, but many others do. However, I've seen a lot of things being said about these changes on the forum specifically that I think need to take some things into consideration. First off, I think it's important to note that just because a change might be unpopular, or just because a change might have a lot of dislikes, it doesn't always guarantee it's a bad change. There was clearly a reason that this was done. I personally can't see any scenario where they would introduce this nerf out of absolutely nowhere for no reason. Ultimately, players have to remember that this is the admin's game, not theirs. And if they want their game to be played a certain way, the players ultimately have to follow that, even if they disagree. Clearly, infinite Slayer trading was not something that the team saw in hindsight when they introduced Derpy as a mayor. And while it's always better to fix something sooner rather than later, ultimately they did introduce that fix, so it'll do far more good to accept that quicker than spend days yelling about something that's not getting reverted. Second, I've seen some posts from players trying to convince outsiders to go to the changelog and leave dislikes on it in an attempt to revert those changes, and I think that way of thinking is something that really should be on its way out. I said just a moment ago that changes like this aren't usually getting reverted. They had a reason for doing so, and they're gonna stick to it. Trying to gather a mini army to dislike spam a post is only gonna make it more likely that they double down on these changes, plus get you in trouble, which isn't necessary. You don't have to take the L on this one, it's not worth it. I also think this bandwagoning style of thinking impacts other users in a not good way. A player should be able to make up their own mind about something and not be pressured into giving something a good or bad rating, even if they aren't 100% feeling that way. I think a player should be able to look at the changes and decide for themselves whether they think it's good or bad. If the changes overall don't affect their playstyle, why should they be pressured into saying that the changes are bad? Here's the final thing I wanted to say regarding these posts. Skyblock is such a massive game mode. With the raw emotion I've seen from some of these posts, it almost feels like some of these players truly believe that Slayers are legit, the only thing the game has to offer. That Slayers are all that Skyblock is. It's absolutely not. Skyblock has so much to offer. Why not try something else if you feel like a certain way of playing isn't viable anymore? If you tried something else before, why not try it again now? Tons of updates have come out since then, and things like farming, fishing, mining may be extremely different than they were when you tried them. And who knows, maybe you'll come to greatly enjoy them. Possibly far more than Slayers and Slayer trading. Also, not really enough to justify being its own point, but at the end of the day, you don't have to vote Derpy as mayor. It's not a requirement every time he comes up. I guess to kind of summarize here, don't take things too personal. The admins aren't here to purposefully make your lives miserable. At least I think they aren't. Just know that they really do try to make the game as enjoyable and fair for everyone as they can. What do you guys think? Are you guys on team yay or team nay when it comes to these changes? Let me know in the comments. Check out my holiday long rank giveaway. It's ongoing. You could win. Just click the top right corner to find out how to do so. Alright, see you guys next time. Peace.